And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, everybody. Eric Dim, your most complained cop, NYPD. This is New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast, bringing you 265 Police Live series. Of course, with me as founder and co-host of the podcast, John McKay, retired lieutenant. He's got our shirt on, so we'll be selling this merchandise again soon. Should be on the website. Actually, I think it's still available right now. Am I right, John?
Yeah, you guys could pick a shirt. This is the original one. It's back for sale online at Myers. There was a little hiccup. Clear that up. It's back. Go to Myers. There'll be a link wherever you watch or listen to this episode. There'll be a link at the bottom to purchase the shirt online. Or you could go into Myers and they should be back on the racks. If they're not, easiest way is online. That's how I always shop, really.
Outstanding. Let's show some support. Grab your shirt. It's a badass shirt, honestly. It's nice material, fits well, especially if you're working out. You get ready for the summer, staying in shape. Anyway, let's get right into a great episode. I mean, the NYPD is on fire right now. There's some political propaganda that's going on at Columbia University, other universities in New York City, and throughout the entire country with this rioting that's starting to build up. Some call it protests. I call it riots, and just pure domestic terror that's going on throughout the country. This pro-Palestinian effort, which is AKA BLM, AKA Occupy Wall Street, give it any name you want. It's all the same thing. I think the country is seeking out the next George Floyd, and this entire thing just points to the election with Donald Trump. So, John, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. The title of this podcast is The NYPD is No Longer Apolitical.
Yeah, so I think we ended on, not the last episode that we put out, but the episode before. We ended talking about how Kaz Daughtry said that the NYPD couldn't respond to emergencies inside of campuses. Well, he said that they could only respond. To be fair, he said they could only respond to emergencies. But apparently assaulting people, holding people hostage, intimidating people, stopping children from going to school is no longer an emergency in New York City. So to respond to those things that are no longer emergencies, he needed the permission of universities. So we started this new 911 system now in New York City, where you no longer, like, a student just can't report to the police because supposedly they're not allowed to go on private property. News to me, news to every other cop that's ever worked in the street, news to every law enforcement agency across the country. But they can't go in there without the permission of these universities. So this new 911 system actually isn't online or anything like that. It's actually a letter that the NYPD needs from these organizations to go forth and move in. And what myself and Eric spoke about, we had filmed that episode way prior to the campus actually being taken over and buildings being taken over. And we said that they're going to start taking over buildings. They're saying they're going to take over buildings on the campus, and then they're going to move to occupy the city. And even bigger than that, we've been saying for months, how come you're not going after the organizers? How come you're not going after the funding? And now here we are. Today is May 5th. We've been asking since October 7th. So now all of a sudden, the last few days, they know that this is being funded and they know there are nefarious actors behind this.
Yeah, you know, I also find it quite disturbing that, again, Kaz Daughtry boxed himself in. He made a direct statement on Twitter, on social media, where he said that the NYPD couldn't take any enforcement at the campus and that they had to have this telegram, which is, you know, like the days of Paul Revere. But what's ironic about it is that the letter came out after the podcast. So it's my contention that they definitely watched the podcast and they said, okay, now we have to produce this letter. Because John and I both expressively, adamantly said on this podcast that he boxed himself in, Kaz Daughtry, to say that they can't take any enforcement. But what we said was that he was kind of right? They couldn't take enforcement when it comes to trespass and burglary because those complaints you actually need to complain. But there are crimes and there are violations that just on site, what a police officer witnesses, there's no complaint needed. And that applies to numerous violations and infractions that were going on at the campus of domestic terror. But of course, they had to double down and actually produce this letter. And the letter they actually put on social media. And I think that the reason they put the letter on social media was in opposition to this podcast. Like, hey, like, look, see, I told you so. What do you think about that, John?
I think everything they do is in opposition to this podcast, or it's actually information that we gave them or suggestions that we gave them that they started to eventually use, or they needed to gaslight to pretend like they actually are doing something. They're like, hey, those guys really got a point. Everyone's kind of beating us up about this now, and the media's all over it. So yeah, no, I agree. And then they get the letter, right? They get the letter. They go into Columbia. And they're working on clearing these encampments and taking back the building. It should be noted that the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence, Rebecca Weiner, is actually a professor for Columbia. So I don't know how that is not a conflict of interest itself. Kaz Daughtry today is saying that they're going to find out who's radicalizing these students. It's in my opinion that there are numerous entities radicalizing students. The biggest one of them is the actual universities themselves. So your Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence may be partaking in radicalizing students. So to me, I see that it's really a big conflict of interest there, and something that no one brought up. And I think that's a big omission.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned omissions, right? We'll get to a big omission later on in the podcast that the police department forgot to mention or intentionally did not mention. We're going to get into that, but let's talk about this first omission, right? So I think it's kind of ironic. We talk about she's the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence, and here we have this incident going on at the campus. You know what? Ironic. It's ironic. Is she gathering intelligence from the NYPD to provide to the campus, or is she gathering intelligence from the campus to provide to the NYPD? Because honestly, there's different ways to look at this, and it does give the appearance of impropriety. And the fact that this information was not released prior to the NYPD actually taking action, when they actually decided to make entry into the campus, is absolutely ridiculous. And again, even if it's a complete omission and they just thought it was not necessary to tell the public, I don't know how you would think it's not necessary. I think that's a big deal. But I always say an omission is just as good enough as intentional lying, because it doesn't make a difference. If that is legit, we'll never believe it, because we're now reading between the lines, we're looking below the surface, and we're always going to think to ourselves, well, what is the NYPD hiding here? So it doesn't matter at this point. The lie is already there. And I think sometimes, in some cases, an omission is worse than lying, because you're intentionally trying to hold back some information. You're not even trying to give a story, trying to explain it. You're just trying to hopefully bury it and it goes away. But something like this, that's a big deal. Again, could she be a mole? Think about it. She could give intelligence to the campus from the NYPD. I think she should be removed immediately. And anyone that appointed her also and held this back should be removed immediately also.
An omission's a lie, and depending what that omission is, and we'll get into that. But so Columbia sends the messenger, Paul Revere style, probably on horseback. They probably didn't even take the elevator. They went up the stairs of 1PP. They got all the way up to the top, and they hand-delivered this letter. And then the NYPD goes into Columbia. Now, as usual, the rank and file, I think, do an outstanding job. Outstanding job. They bring the Bearcat in. I believe that was a lot of theatrics. I believe that was definitely there, but I loved it. I would have loved to have one through that window. I'm sure you would have loved to yourself, Eric. I would have loved to have been there that night. That was probably one of the first times in a long time that I was like, damn, I wish I was still a cop right at this moment. But then I think about, well, I'd have to listen to these people, and then I'm like, maybe I could just watch it from TV and it's not that bad. So they go in, they handle it, I believe, very well. Very well. It's definitely not without incident, but we're immediately told that it's without incident. And a ton of propaganda comes out on social media, on mainstream media from the NYPD. The first thing being, we see a Palestinian flag get ripped down. There was a Palestinian flag put up in Columbia. I think that's wrong. I think that's a sign of our country being taken over. I do believe it was the right thing to do, to put to take that Palestinian flag, take it down, hoist that American flag up. But the whole way it happened, I really didn't like it. Their public relations skills are awful. You know, we have large Palestinian communities in New York City. We have officers who are Palestinian. We have civilians who are of Palestinian descent. They didn't put that flag up there, right? So what is Kaz Daughtry is looking for? You know, the Daily News quoted what I said. I said they're looking for that Iwo Jima moment, right? Or their 9/11 moment, where it's like they're looking to hoist a flag like they were soldiers in war, and now we're going to put the American flag back, which is symbolic and it's good, and it's definitely a morale builder, and it should have been done. But to me, it wasn't done organically. It was done with the full intention of a photo op. And what do you see right in the beginning of the video, which shows how inept the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information is, or how inept Kaz Daughtry is, or there's no communication between either of them. You know, I don't even know why the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information is out there wearing what appears to be NYPD hiking helmet to me. I mean, I don't even know what that contraption was on his head. I don't know why he's out there in the first place. But if he wants to go out there and play cop because he never did it when he was actually on the job, I get it. It's fun, right? You want to do it, right? So that's fine. But I don't know where the miscommunication is. What you see is you see the flag get ripped down. You see the Palestinian flag get thrown to the ground and the American flag get hung up. And you don't see the men and women, the rank and file that actually went through those windows, that risked their lives, their careers, their finance, their basically risked everything. You don't see like a large picture of them standing in front of the American flag. No, you see the flag not even raised, and you see Kaz Daughtry there and Tariq Shepard with his stupid helmet on, pointing at the camera with the flag not even raised for a photo op. Then they post that video with them. It's absolutely staged and fake to me. That's what I saw.
Let me just say this, and I don't mean to insult the rank and file. I support the rank and file. I think that their actions were exemplary. No matter what is asked of the rank and file, they do what they're paid and trained to do. And you know what? We have been so critical of the NYPD leadership. Let's make that clear. Of the NYPD leadership. And I said the NYPD used to be the go-to policing, and unfortunately, at this point, it's not. However, that's separate from the rank and file. I still believe the rank and file, the overwhelming majority as a whole, is still the go-to policing. We have some problems amongst the police officers right now. We do have some meat, timid, and docile. We see police officers getting assaulted, but there is numerous different contributing factors to that. Not along with just the personnel, but also the climate and the fact that they have an inept and inadequate leadership and no support from the upper echelon, the legislation, and especially the mayor, because he talks both sides of his mouth. But I don't want to insult the rank and file. They acted fantastic, did their job. But I think this entire operation from start to finish is over the top. It's a big show. And you mentioned theatrics. I think that these theatrics are above the top. I think the entire thing is a movie screenplay. I've seen the Bearcat many times. The Bearcat, I was the anti-crime sergeant at PSA 4, and the Bearcat was parked there numerous times because we had a garage there, and it would be staged there sometimes for months. And it's a valuable tool. But you rarely see that Bearcat go out because it's extremely expensive to use unless it's something that's really vital. It's used for extreme cases. Now, does it look cool on camera? Watching that, yes. Do I think that the Bearcat was necessary for this operation? I'm going to be honest with you. No. I think they could have breached this building and breached the campus and handled this entire operation without it. The fact that they use it, I don't see any problem with it. But I think with this administration, it just shows they used it to say, I, Kaz Daughtry, or I, John Shell, did this. Look what we did. And they love fireworks. They love the big show. They want everyone to say that they're the dream team. It looks cool, but I think it's over the top, and I don't think that their purposes of utilization for these resources is not with good intentions. It's about their own photo op. this whole entire event. Now, with that breach, the police officers, they acted professionally. They did their job well. I just want to say, listen, I was there at the riots. I participated in the riots in George Floyd, and those are the same actors we see right now. And there are some that are extremely violent. But as a whole, a majority of them they're meek, they're weak. This is some like malnourished and just very weak people, honestly. The majority of these people that take part in these events. So as strong as I see the police department to need such force with these kids, it's a little laughable, honestly. Now, when we get to the portion of the flag, I will say this. I believe in honor. I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud to serve the United States military. I was a United States Marine. And I'm a firm believer that the American flag should always be the premier, should be the top flag. And when I say that, for instance, sometimes, John, maybe you've seen, I know a lot of people see this, you see people driving and they are proud of their of where they came from. They're proud of their ancestors, and I get it. And they might have on their antenna or on somewhere on the car, they'll have an American flag and the Italian flag, or an American flag and a Puerto Rican flag. I'm not picking on anybody, but sometimes we see that the flag, or the Italian flag, will be above the American flag. If your roots are from Italy, God bless. But I still believe the American flag should be at the top. This is our home country, support America. So with the removal of the Palestinian flag and replacing it with the American flag, I think absolutely thumbs up. And all the stuff, if we just look at it on the surf, it looks super cool. If we didn't have this podcast right now, and we weren't looking into the police department the way we do in media journalists, and we were just part of the rank and file, we might be giving a thumbs up too and say, you know what, this looks super cool. But now that we're actually looking below the surface and we read between the lines, you know what, there's a lot going on here that I think is just distasteful, unprofessional, unbecoming, and it's just absolutely insulting. I've been in contact with numerous Marines that I served with. We served in Iraq together, and they're like, what is going on here with the NYPD? Even though they support this whole operation, they don't want domestic terror. But the fact that they took the flag, the pro-Palestinian flag, and threw it on the floor, replaced it with the American flag, and had a stage photo op, they find it complete insulting to every Marine that served in World War II and had an Iwo Jima moment. Now, let's just say this. I just want to compare. That Iwo Jima moment, that Mount Suribachi, that the Marines celebrated in World War II, that whole picture was an accident. They didn't have cell phones back then. That was organic. That picture was by accident. Someone said, wow, this is pretty cool. We gotta get this out. But that picture was taken by accident. Now, with this picture with Kaz Daughtry and Tariq Shepard, this was completely staged. And if anything, I always say, as a leader, you don't have to praise yourself. You should be praising others. If you really wanted to have a stage photo op, you should have grabbed some of your troops, put them in a photo and say, listen, guys, thank you for what you do. Take a picture with the American flag. I'm going to send this to the news and get you guys some credit. But no, it's always about I, Kaz, I, John Shell, I, Tariq Shepard. And you know what? There's no I in team. But there sure is two eyes of idiot. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was staged from the get-go. And, like, the lack of public relations skills is horrible, because I have no problem with the Palestinian flag being removed. I don't even think they threw it to the floor intentionally. I think they were just so hyped up that let's get this flag up. He threw it to the ground. But edit the damn thing out. You have your whole video production crew. Just put some fancy music with them pulling the flag up, and have it be the rank and file. 100% right, And I the Daily News did quote something that I said along those lines. It should have been the people that did the work. But like, now you throw that flag on the ground, you create more protests. You create more hostility towards the NYPD. You paint yourself as a political organization. And I agree with you, Eric. Listen, I'll tell you right now, I don't like to see any flags anywhere. I don't like when I hear boxers are boxing for any other flag and they live in this country. I don't like when I see businesses with any other flag in front of the American flag. I don't like when I see other flags on cars. This is America. You're living here for a reason. If you love that other country, you should be there. I'm here because I love it here. I don't consider myself an Italian American. I really don't. My heritage is my family comes from Sicily. They come from a little town called Macari in Sicily. It's right on the western part of Sicily. I come from Brooklyn. When people ask me where I'm from, I'm like, I'm from Brooklyn. you know, that's where I was. That's where I was born. That's where I spent the early years of my life. You know, and in my teens, I went to Staten Island. I would say Brooklyn, Staten Island, whatever. I'm from New York. I'm a New York City kid. That's who I am. I'm not an Italian American. I'm an American. So I agree with you. So I'm not knocking putting that flag back. But again, even what you just said, I didn't know the thing about Iwo Jima. But that's honestly what should have happened, right? An organic moment where you're raising and you're hoisting that flag. And guess what, Kaz? You're so itching for this to get out on social media, and you could paint Eric Adams as a patriot now, the guy who's bringing hundreds of thousands of illegals. He's putting them to work. He's fighting to get illegal aliens work while at the same time fighting against people like myself who want to go back to their careers, people who were worse than me that were terminated for absolutely nothing, for them exercising their First Amendment God-given rights, who exercise religious freedom, something that New York City Mayor Eric Adams shut down. But they're so quick to paint themselves as patriot. They look over the fact they threw the flag to the ground, and that's going to make cops' jobs harder, and that's going to get more cops hurt. They look over everything. They get that out, and then they go on the news. And it's the propaganda, the props and the propaganda. It's honestly hysterical. I love it because, I mean, the memes are great. What did Ed Caban won Best Supporting Actor when he had his chain drop moment? I think that was the best thing that we've seen. I mean, like that was the start of it. The Ed Caban, he won Best Supporting Actor for Chain Drop.
Yeah, considering he's been missing most of the movie, we're going to have to give him Best Supporting Actor because he missed the prequel. He's going to miss the sequel also. But since he's been absent most of the movie, he definitely gets Best Supporting Actor. I mean, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that. I don't want to give it too much thought, but it's just embarrassing that the police department actually took the time out to rehearse that, because you could see it was so rehearsed. The way he holds up the chain, you could see in his face, it was a very proud moment for him, and he drops that chain. It's like, you know what? You could see he felt good about himself. Like, listen, it's cool. I get it. You took the chain, but do you really need to do a prop like that? And I always say, like, true leaders and warriors, say less. Honestly, say less. Do more. Your actions will be reflective of the fact that you're a real leader. Good leaders, they don't have to say a lot because their actions show a lot. And it just shows what this fake leadership of the NYPD that we're at right now. You know what? Let's play the video. It's just hysterical. Everybody take a look here. Here's Ed Caban. He's the police commissioner of New York City Police Department. Of course, he's got his prop, his chain ready to go. And you know what? Best Supporting Actor. Here we go.
Job to keep people in our city safe. And the NYPD is ready to do their job anywhere and anytime we're called upon. They tried to lock us out, but the NYPD and the people of the city of New York will never be locked out, and we will always work together to keep our city safe.
Oh, that was great.
Oh, that is, I don't know. That is outstanding. Oh my God. Who choreographed that? Like I mean, it's hysterical. They got together and said, you know what? Yeah, let's do this. That was definitely rehearsed. That was definitely talked upon with one another, because he doesn't say much. Let's be honest. So that was a real iconic moment for him. Ed Caban, you know what? We got a good laugh out of it. Outstanding. All right. Listen, thank God for the NYPD leadership, the administration that's going on right now, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to have these, you know, these satire memes. So I appreciate it, honestly. Here we go. All right.
Let's Kaz takes the same chain. He goes on Fox and Newsmax, and I think one more, and he brings that exact chain, and like it's the prop. So he wins honorable mention 2024 for the Oscars, and then Tariq Shepard, same thing. He goes on, I think, that lefty maniac that has Trump derangement syndrome. His name's Morning Joe on MSNBC. The guy that Shell always goes on when he goes and hangs out with his boy Al Sharpton, because he's a real right-wing, great MAGA patriot who loves this country. So he's hanging out with Al Sharpton. He loves cops. He's a big defender of cops. So Tariq Shepard goes on his show also with that chain. Embarrassing. Like completely embarrassing.
Yeah, and that's honestly, listen, John, that's the part that's really insulting about this. The NYPD is extremely professional, and they could have nipped this in the bud hours and days before that this got to the point that they had to go in at nighttime when the Hamilton building was already taken over. The NYPD could have stepped in more before that and shut this thing down. It would have been a complete different myriad than it is right now. But since they were called upon at that point, they did their job. Did they put themselves in harm's way? Of course, the NYPD puts themselves in harm's way every day. But is this an Iwo Jima moment? Is this a 9/11 moment? Absolutely not. I think it's quite insulting to the men and women that were there at the grounds of 9/11. I think it's quite insulting to the men that served overseas in World War II. It's just in Japan. It's really insulting to have a comparison. It's obvious they're trying to mirror that and have this iconic moment for themselves. And unfortunately, when you try to have an artificial moment, it's just completely disingenuous. And people don't root for you. And that's the part that I've been trying to be so adamant on this podcast, right? And I can convey this to Kaz Daughtry, Tariq Shepard, and John Shell also, especially John Shell. People always root for the underdog. Just think about a boxing match, right? When two people are competing at a UFC match or even a basketball game, two teams are competing. Everyone roots for the underdog or just the guys that are extremely humble and likable. Even if the people that are likable are not as talented, are not as good, those are the people that we root for. It's just human nature. We always want people that are likable, people that we can relate to win. And that's what I say to Kaz Daughtry, Tariq Shepard, John Shell. Be likable, be humble. And if you operate in that professional manner and you have humility, people will like you and they will want you to win. And when you make mistakes, they will root for you and they will give you extreme amount of leniency in comparison to they do now because you're not humble and you're not likable. Let's be honest.
I wouldn't even give them any advice. I don't even know why you're being friendly and giving any advice to them. Honestly, they don't deserve any advice. At this point, like I'm not kidding. Like I really want to see them arrested and removed. I do. I want to see them arrested and removed from the NYPD because and terminated because what they're doing, they're blatantly lying. I mean, they're attacking people's First Amendment rights, like myself and you, Eric. They're going after reporters. It's a horrible look what they're doing. They're going after pro-law enforcement accounts, and they're using the rank and file. They're hiding behind it. Oh, yeah, we're going to stand up for the rank and file. They're telling Mike Cologne. Like, what are you talking about? You're going to stand? Well, the guy supports you, like, more than anybody. Like, and you're going to go after, you're going to stand up for them? No, you're standing up for yourself. You're standing up for your own ego. Look at this. I'm going to pull this one up. Kaz Daughtry, here's a perfect example of, here's a meme that we did. This is him, but he really wrote this, that he put this story on his Instagram. I have identified every drag racing location in New York City. We outside. The kid's an idiot. Like, he's so wants to go viral for everything. He wants to be like an Instagram star, a Twitter star, a movie star, a media star. And he's like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. You're just taunting these kids to go out and drag race. You haven't, guess what, Kaz? Take a map of New York City and any straightaway, that is a drag racing location in New York City. And I don't believe you identified anything. You had someone put the work together and do that. And guess what? What do they'll do? They're like, okay, we won't go to our usual spots for the next couple of weeks. We'll drag race somewhere else. You're an idiot. Like, the whole thing is staged. And then after they do the propaganda, they do a press conference. They're spiking the ball in the end zone. And again, I don't believe that removing people from Colombia, especially at that point, was a cause for victory. You know, there's still, as of right now, there's campuses where they're agitators and where there's protesters. So I don't see how you're spiking the ball in the end zone when you haven't even completed the first quarter yet. Yeah, you removed people out of Colombia. But boom, they're spiking the ball in the end zone. They post this stupid video of Kaz and Tariq with his hiking helmet on. And, you know, they take all these photos and then they're doing a whole media tour with their props and all this other stuff. And then what happens? Students are saying the cops shot at somebody when we were in there. The cops. And then there's numerous reports. So now the media is like all over it. They're like, we're hearing that there were shots fired, there were shots fired, there were shots fired. Now, over and over again, they said there were no incidents, there were no injuries. And by the way, there were injuries. So that's a lie. Am I saying that anyone was severely injured? No, I don't know that, but there were injuries. There were people that reported injuries. So that's a lie. That's a blatant lie to the public. There were no injuries. You know, and to me, I don't like, listen, you got to go in there and you got to remove hostile people outside of a burglary. You should expect injuries. Why are you lying about it? Yeah, somebody sustained a scratch on their arm or whatever it is. What's the cause for lie? But then 2 days later, they hold a press conference that, yeah, in fact, there was a cop that had an accidental discharge.
Well, before we get to the accidental discharge, I just want to first go back to when you said with that tweet with Kaz Daughtry. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think if you look below the surface, that tweet represents a lot. Because if you look at it, how it's separated, he says, I identified every drag location. We outside. So it's not by accident that he says I. He's very cognizant of when he writes something to identify himself to get the credit, or we. Because he could have said we identified or my people identified and we outside. Some of the best leaders, they remove themselves from the equation and they always give the praise to their people. That's what some of the best leaders do. And you don't have to say, look, I did this. I never had to tell my bosses, look, I did this or look, I did that. I always knew that the best leaders, they don't have to do that. And the people will know, the people that work for you will praise you without you having to say anything, because your work will show for itself. So you don't have to say, I did this, I did that. When I was in the Marine Corps going through boot camp, and any cops that watch this that were Marines, they know this is very important. It's very psychological, the connection to your mindset, to your words. There is a huge connection to it. And when I was in boot camp, you're forbidden to say the word I. It's always you speak in third person for the purposes so that you learn the ideology of teams. So you would say, this recruit. You never say, I did this. This recruit did A, B, and C. Or you say, we did this. And then you do that through your entire 3-month boot camp entry-level process so that you get indoctrinated to the team ideology, because there is a psychological nexus to your words. And Kaz Daughtry clearly hasn't learned that ideology of saying I. They constantly, I did this, I did that. And it's about, there again, you said it, he wants to be some type of movie star. He wants to be recognized and let it come organic. And I agree with you, John. Let me just go back to what you said earlier. I agree. I'm giving advice, but it's more sarcastic at this point. I do agree with you. At this point, I want to see them in handcuffs, because I think what they're doing is absolutely fraudulent. I believe it's an act of terror. Them using the weight of the police department to put fear into different organizations is, what's the difference between that and these campuses? These campuses are trying to put, these kids are trying to put fear into people to change their ideology. So what's the difference here? They're doing the same thing on a different level, but they're doing the same thing.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I believe that there's a drummed up criminal investigation against myself and you for absolutely no reason other than we exercise our First Amendment right and do a podcast and put out memes that make fun of them. And they're political figures. Sorry, we're exercising our First Amendment right. And again, I don't think that like they're doing it to actually lock us up. I think they're doing it to get access to our phone records and our bank accounts to see that who we talk to, where our money's coming from, and things like of that nature. And and it's completely unprofessional and it's illegal. It's completely illegal. It's show me the man, I'll show you the crime. You know, that's Stalinistic. And that's what they're doing. And again, while they're doing that, they're lying to the public. Again, have they admitted that 2023 crime was up, violent crime was up, regular crime was up, all crime was up in 2023? No. They're still telling people that they brought crime down last year. They're still saying it. It's a complete lie. They go on the news. What do they say? No incidents, no injuries. There were no incidents, no injuries. Lie. 2 days later, Tariq Shepard stuttering, holding a press conference. Why is he stuttering, holding a press conference? Because he's saying, oh, yeah, actually, there was an accidental discharge and there was some people injured. But, you know, I was working for 2 days, so I couldn't, you know, and I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't have to report it. But you didn't think it was a big deal. You're spiking the ball in the end zone. You're telling the public all this rah, rah, rah. Look at us. We're Americans. We work for the most progressive, one of the most progressive mayors in the country, Eric Adams, who calls the federal government the national government, which is something a communist does. The national government is the Chinese government. The federal government is the United States government. So you got to listen to the words that are being played here. Here's a guy who denied hundreds of thousands of people their First Amendment privileges. He doesn't believe in the Constitution. The guy he probably doesn't even understand it. He doesn't understand the laws. He hides behind some of them, but then he goes and breaks them. I mean, how many campaign finance laws has this guy broken? I mean, it's unreal. So that they're hanging him up as he's a patriot. They're patriots, but they're attacking people who are writing opinion pieces. There was an article that came out. Graham Raymond from the Daily News. He misquoted something that there was a video about Daughtry, and he misquoted something that Daughtry said. He said that during a video, Daughtry said, I don't remember exactly what it was. It was X, Y, and Z, but Daughtry said something else. Daughtry is like, you have a video. He retweets it. You have a video. I did not say that. I said this, but the whole thing's completely irrelevant because I'm like, why the hell do you care? Why do you even care that this guy misquoted you? You should be so focused in on your job that the critics shouldn't even matter. You shouldn't be sitting here listening to this podcast right now. You should be focusing on public safety. You should be focusing on how do I make New York the best version of itself instead of what it's coming, where crime is rising and the quality of life continues to drop at a very fast pace. That's what you should be focused on. Not your critics, not the media, not social media. This is a social media centric administration. They are gaslighting everyone. And I see that John Shell's going to the Whitestone Republican Club with Joe Impetrace to talk about the crime crisis in America or some shit. I'm like, I saw Vicky Palladino put it out. I was like, that's complete gaslighting. All they're going to do is say how great of a job Eric Adams is doing, how crime is down, and the biggest problem they're facing is perception and fear. That's the crime. That's the thing that they're facing, how social media is driving all of this. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. I mean, what possibly could they have to say? They're not going to say anything that in any way targets what's going on. And now they're going after, well, these kids are radicalized. There's organizations funding these things. And in Politico today comes out, you know who's a major funder of these protests? Joe Biden's biggest donors. So and like I said, and Eric said, and we said weeks ago, you're going to see them start to go after low-level organizers, but they're never going to get to the top. They're going to gaslight you over months and lock up low-level organizers. They're never going to the top. Now they're just figuring out these things are funded. Now they're just figuring out there's agitators. Everyone knew from 2020. Everyone's been saying it since 2020. These are the same people. They're funded, they're paid, they're making money. Now, all of a sudden, they know it. These people are liars. They have zero integrity. There were no incidents. Eric, there were no incidents and no injuries. You conduct a search warrant and you give that information back on your 49 about the search warrant. There were nothing. And it turns out that one of you guys had an accidental discharge and there were injuries. What happens to you as a supervisor, Eric?
Oh, absolutely. You're probably going to get suspended, modified, demoted. You know what? You could actually I got to look at the discipline matrix and see what's in there right now. Maybe you could face termination. You know what? Right now, the discipline matrix is the doctrine. It's the most important document when it comes to discipline for the New York City Police Department. That's how we hold the police department accountable. Misleading statements and unintentional lying is subject to termination with aggravating factors according to the disciplinary matrix. And what do we see from the leadership? Just outright lying to the public. And you said it, and I agree. We both talked about this. An omission is lying. It's the same thing. It's equivalent. And let's talk about this omission by Tariq Shepard. Tariq Shepard, who's the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, has been pretty thorough when it comes to his speeches when he speaks to the press in comparison to Kaz Daughtry and some of the other upper echelon. He has experience being with DCPI his entire career. He never did the street. So he understands the negotiation between the police department and the media, and he has that relationship, and he has the ability to provide information. So he understands and he knows that it's a complete lie to tell the media that there were absolutely no incidents. I mean, that's very specific to say no incidents. That means absolutely nothing happened where any force had to be used, had to be applied. Absolutely no rounds were fired. And it was interesting, he said in his press conference while he stood alongside Chief Valdez, who is a nice guy, but he happens to be someone with a very low IQ. I can't believe they actually have him on a podium. That guy could barely keep his leg. That guy could barely stop shaking at a Comstat, let alone a press conference. I mean, honestly, I don't know how that guy made chief. Nice guy, but he's got no business running the police department. Anyway, but Tariq Shepard, you know, you could see it. You could see it in his demeanor in the press conference that he's lying. His body language is completely different than when he gives speeches prior to this. Completely different. And when the reporters are asking questions about this accidental discharge, he said, what was question number 2? Because he's buying time to try to think about this lie because they got caught red-handed. They got caught with their pants down. And the fact that they omitted this, again, goes back to what we were saying earlier. When you omit information, it doesn't matter. If that's legitimately what happened, that an ESU sergeant fired around accidentally, no one got hurt, nothing else happened, you know what? We're never going to believe that that's actually what happened because you omitted the information. You intentionally hid that information, hoping it would never get uncovered, hoping that you would never have to tell that story. So now anything you say will never be believable. And I will say this, when I learned in the Marine Corps, I go back to the Marine Corps because I hold the Marine Corps of high esteem because we learn professionalism and stoicism. An accidental discharge is negligence and stupidity. Your finger is supposed to be off that trigger at all times. It's very serious. You're accountable for every round that comes out of that firearm. So I don't believe this story. And I heard Chief Valdez say that the sergeant had to transition it from his dominant hand to non-dominant hand. And you know what? I'm quite curious where he got that terminology and that verbiage other than this podcast, because we mentioned dominant hand and non-dominant hand numerous times in the episode where we had the captain off duty involved in an incident by himself. We talked about why no cop should be alone. And they're using the verbiage from this podcast completely. But since we're talking about that, I never heard of that tactic of switching the firearm from your dominant hand to your non-dominant hand to get out a window. It just doesn't make sense to me. If you're the one that's going to get out a window, wouldn't someone else have their firearm so that you could actually have your firearm holstered and have both hands available as you're getting out a window? I don't believe that story for a second.
I don't know. I wasn't there. This is what they're reporting. And like, again, I don't trust anything that they're reporting because basically everything they're reporting is lies, and their omission of that nature is a lie. And that is part of the jargon in the police department. False, misleading, omitted statements, right? Omitted statements is a big one, you know, because it's a false statement. And they omitted by not saying it. And then they made the false statement by saying nothing happened. And then they got caught with their pants down, you know. Eric, you talk a lot about when you were in the military. I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. One, you take a video of yourself throwing another country's flag on the ground. What would happen to you if that happened? And then also you had an accidental discharge while you were in the military. What would happen?
Well, the first one, if you threw your flag down, you would absolutely be court-martialed. There's no doubt about it. And if you had an accidental discharge, let's say like you clean your weapon or something like that, that's what I consider an accidental discharge when it comes to the police department. You clean your weapon at home, no one's around, or you're in your locker, you're grabbing your firearm, you're transitioning to your holster, getting dressed, you let a round go. That's an accidental discharge. I still believe it's negligence and stupidity because that firearm has to be taken care of very serious. However, and within the military, you will have restrictions. You'll have loss of duty. You'll have 45 days of suspension, and you will pay fines. But if you had an accidental discharge in the manner that we saw here in the police department in an operation as this, you will absolutely be court-martialed, and you will definitely go to the brig. What does brig mean? You're going to jail. Absolutely, hands down.
I mean, and you know, I think it's big, right? Because everyone's applauding it. A lot of cops are applauding it. A lot of retired cops are applauding what they did and what they saw. And I just keep going back. I'm like, they lied to you about everything else. Now they do this stage propaganda front, and then they lie about the breakdown of the incident. And to me, like, Pat Tillman flashed all over that to me. You can't trust, when you can't trust the information that's being put out. And that was a big reason, and still a big reason, why I believe the media needs access to 911 calls and tapes. You know, they could have a slight delay. I got no issue with that. But full access after that slight delay, and not that long, 5 minutes, something of that nature, you know, so that, you know, that it'll alleviate the possibility of ambushes and things of that nature. But Pat Tillman is the reason why I thought about that. I said, you know, his family, if God forbid something happens to you, your men and women in the New York City Police Department, your family has the right to know what happened, right? They could say, oh, it was an accident, when it wasn't. Or they could say whatever they want, and the truth never comes out. And when you have people with low integrity, like that are running the police department now, that have numerous sexual scandals against them, that bully and intimidate any critic or anyone that tries to report any of the low integrity violations that they've done and crimes that they've committed. And when they go after them, when you have people of that nature running the New York City Police Department, you really got to worry about your own safety as a police officer. You have to worry about your family's safety when they interact with the New York City Police Department. And the public, it's for the same thing. You know, God forbid there is a road cop going out there. The family deserves to know the truth about something that happens, and it could easily be covered up because, hey, what? It's an election year, you know, and you could tell this is a completely politicized NYPD now. I mean, John Schell went after Harry Siegel, Harry Deceitful Siegel, as he calls him, Daily News reporter. He went after him, and he said something there that was like it shook me. It shook my spine when he said it. He said he hates this administration. What do you care? What do you care if he hates the administration? It's not your job to go to bat for them because they hate the administration. And by the way, I believe that's the same reason that they came after us, is because they need to make Eric Adams look good. And they believe that this is a good strategy. And some people I believe, of low intelligence and who aren't looking at the bigger picture are biting into it. But it's not going to be me. I'm not going to sit there and clap and say, oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah, American flag's there. No, it's all lies to me. The whole thing's lies. And it's scary to me. It's scary to me for the rank and file in New York City Police Department. It's scary to me for the public in New York City. It's scary to myself, as I'm often in New York City, and I don't trust these people that are running this department. I don't know. I don't believe they have the integrity of people I want in a law enforcement position, because I feel like it could be used in a nefarious manner against myself when I've done nothing wrong or committed no crimes. And that's how people should feel, because this is what they're doing. They've basically, it's no longer an apolitical organization. It's a completely politicized enforcement arm of New York City Mayor Eric Adams.
John, what would have happened to me during my tenure, the last 8 years, where Cop Watch was making numerous videos of me when I was involved in incidents, firearm arrests, anything. They put videos out, they put memes, they superimposed my picture. They said I was the most wanted criminal cop that's out there. I mean, all different kinds of things that they put out about me. What do you think would have happened? Now, I never took it personal at this point today, even in my retirement. I don't care. I don't even pay mind to it. I'm not going to. But what do you think would have happened to me if I would have responded on social media back then as Eric Dim and said, I am not these things that you say, and I have some type of pissing match with them on social media? What if I did that during the 8 years I was a special operations lieutenant through social media? How do you think that would go over with the police department?
You're at least getting suspended and transferred. At least you're getting suspended 30 days. You might suffer some more time, and then you're going to get some highway therapy. Eric, we've had guys terminated for speaking online, some are completely unprofessional, but under fake names, saying ridiculous things online under fake names, not identifying themselves as New York City police officers. They were terminated. We have people that didn't identify themselves as New York City police officers, were in group chats texting and were terminated. We have guys that were on social media, like just doing stupid things, nothing really harmful to anybody, who were terminated and fired. right? Who terminated, some was suspended 30 days. The actions that Kaz Daughtry and John Shell did, if it was anybody of a lower rank, they would be suspended and transferred at least, if not terminated.
Well, absolutely. That's why I wanted to bring that up. Of course, we have to bring up the analogy and show the hypocrisy that goes on within the police department, because the police department has a social media policy. The police department has violations and infractions that actually address this issue that's going on with John Shell and Kaz Daughtry. And people have been held accountable for their actions on social media and interactions they've had with the public that are far less egregious than what's going on with Kaz Daughtry and John Shell. And some of the other upper echelon also. Let's not excuse other upper echelon appointed management that has been involved in this stuff too. It's been Kaz Daughtry and John Shell that have been the most exuberant and the most obvious. But their attacks on social media to journalists, media, and civilians, which I love that this council speaker Adrian Adams pointed out, civilians, and I think they're actually referring to us when they talk about civilians. It's absolutely ridiculous. And let it be known that this podcast, John and myself, were the first entity of civilians and the first entity, period, that faced attack by John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, and this administration through social media. Absolutely, we were the first. And you know what? These the allegations that we addressed publicly on Twitter and Instagram went ignored by the Internal Affairs Bureau of the New York City Police Department and by the media also. And now that media personnel have been attacked, it's finally starting to get addressed. It's actually being addressed by New York City Council Adrian Adams. What do you think about that?
I don't think that she's referring to us. I think that New York City Council, I think the entirety of New York City saw exactly what they did to us. I think everyone knows that the police commissioner's criminal friend threatened me online. Everyone knows that our children were threatened by an active member of the NYPD, who the Internal Affairs Bureau refuses to give our identity, but yet tells us to go to our local police departments to ask for order of protection and to file a criminal complaint against unknown persons. But they'll tell that police department. They won't tell us, so I don't think that they're talking to us. And then the media who listens to this podcast never addresses those facts, that our children were threatened, that the police commissioner's criminal buddy threatened me. And the other thing, and I think which is the biggest thing, the biggest use of police resources, and which I believe John Shell and Kaz Daughtry should have been removed 4 months ago, is when they sent the captain of their citywide response team, which falls out of the chief of patrol's office, the 2 low integrity lieutenants, which falls out of the chief of patrol's office, numerous cops, sergeants, and lieutenants, all simultaneously on our social media in an attempt to smear and intimidate us, to get us offline, and to have us stop doing this podcast. And that to me was the biggest abuse of authority I've ever seen. It was a complete misuse of police resources, money, funding. They had also a member of their legal team. They had a member of the legal team who actually admitted they had meetings about the podcast and the memes with John Shell and Kaz Daughtry. We have that proof. We gave that to Internal Affairs. I'm sure that's going to go absolutely nowhere too. So when we get that, when we get that response, we're highly looking forward to that time period. So Internal Affairs Bureau is doing what the Internal Affairs Bureau, I believe, is doing now, is protecting the NYPD, the upper echelon of the NYPD. Unfortunately, they're like wet noodles, So the Internal Affairs Bureau and the NYPD is a wet noodle. So if you have low integrity individuals, you're protecting low integrity criminal individuals. And now you yourself will be implicated in crimes down the road. If you have people of high integrity and they're not, you're a wet noodle. The wind blows that way. And then you're all good. Everything's all good. But you're just going to bend and fold how it goes. And right now you're working for criminals. And that's what I see. And again, myself and Eric Dim name were ran in department computers hundreds, if not thousands of times by the New York City Police Department for absolutely no reason, which scares me because it's like, well, why did each one of these people run my name? What information specifically do they have? Is it where I live? Is it how much money I have? Is it where my kids go to school? What information were they looking for and why, when this is prior to any of this stuff happening, where they attacked us online and where we believed that they started to investigate us criminally? Why were any of those reasons? Why were our names being ran in department computers? What information was given into who? And then we see these attacks against us, and the media completely didn't say anything. City council members didn't say anything. They're very quick to respond to my tweets. They're very quick when I do that, to say something that I don't know what I'm talking about, or come back. Jamani Williams all over my tweets. Errol Lewis all over the tweets. Harry Siegel, I believe, is all over these tweets and the podcast, and the New York Post, the Daily News, the Gothamist, the City, right? They're all over this podcast and everything we put out there. But yet everyone turned a blind eye to this, including the people who's supposed to uphold integrity in the New York City Police Department. And I don't think Adrian Adams talking about us. I don't. I think that they deserve a probe, but they deserve a probe by the DOI. The DOI that doesn't Eric Adams appoint the commissioner of the DOI?
Well, I don't think they necessarily care about us to actually help us. I do believe that they are mentioning us also, because they can't deny that we are the first entity to be addressed. With that being said, I will say that this is a low integrity administration. This is completely just lacks any moral principle. So with that being said, there's an old statement, ideology. I really believe in it. There's no bad troops. There's only bad leaders, and that's at every level. So we see John Shell and Kaz Daughtry and other upper echelon that have been involved in these pissing matches with journalists, especially John Shell and Kaz Daughtry. And this would not be permitted unless the leadership allowed it. And sure enough, Mayor Eric Adams, he gave the green light for John Shell and Kaz Daughtry to have these pissing matches on social media. He backed it and supported it. Now, you could say that John Shell and Kaz Daughtry acted on social media without the permission of Mayor Eric Adams, and he supported it anyway. But either way, it shows that there's bad leadership, because if there was actually conversation and Mayor Eric Adams gave them the green light behind closed doors, it's terrible leadership. And if that conversation was never discussed, it's still terrible leadership. The fact that they thought that they could do it and get away with it shows that there is bad leadership, and they know that they would not be accountable. And that goes for every level of leadership throughout the police department. The same goes for the citywide response team. The argument has been presented to me, well, the citywide response team acted without the nexus of Kaz Daughtry and John Shell, which I don't believe. I believe that they acted with
they
direction.
said they did.
Right. But I just want to show this argument. So some people have said to me, let's say they acted without this conversation that they were not specifically directed to. And I had said, well, the fact that they thought that they could do it and get away with it shows the failure of leadership. And that's what I'm talking about. There's no bad troops. There's only bad leaders. And we see it's systemically going on in the police department right now. The level of unprofessionalism is from the cops that are entering the door upon entry from the police academy all the way up to police commissioner, including the mayor. The whole police department has now been infected. Look, we just did a podcast where a sergeant just totally browbeat, and I love to use that word. Thank you to Sal Greco. Browbeat Laura Loomer for alleging a crime against an illegal at the Roosevelt Hotel. So that sergeant was using political means to address a situation in a specific manner based on leadership. So we see that the entire police department has been affected. And that's why it's so important, more now than ever, that there's an overhaul with the leadership of the police department immediately. So I would say, God willingly, someone else gets the mayor, becomes the mayor for New York City other than Eric Adams, and replaces the entire upper echelon of the police department so that we can have good leadership and transparency again. Let's make the NYPD good again.
Yeah, I mean, the integrity is so important, and let's just say that the captain decided with all of his guys, with his lieutenants and his sergeants and all, that they were going to act alone. Just miraculously at the same time, Kaz Daughtry's up at award ceremony complaining about us. Let's just say that they acted alone. I mean, What should happen to them? Again, I just said people acting unprofessionally on social media. They were suspended. They were modified. They received transfers. What's happened to these people? Absolutely nothing. You know what happens to them? John Shell and Daughtry put them in videos, almost dangling them in front of us to be like, oh, look, nothing's going to happen to them. We got your complaints. Nothing's going to happen, which is fine. You know, because they're low and they're criminals. They're low integrity and they're criminals. I mean, look at Timothy Pearson. Everybody's eating on these migrant contracts. I got to get my crumbs. Who's eating on these contracts? One, that's what the first thing I want to know. I got some names in mind of who's eating on these contracts, but I'm not going to put that out there because I'm not going to slander anybody. But that should be the first thing. That should be a huge investigation. What did you mean specifically? He should be removed from office immediately. I got to get my crumbs. Everyone's eating on this. Criminal. Then the stuff that's going on with women, where John Shell's bullying women. Criminal. Fire, terminated, removed, arrested, out of it. No longer should be anyone that speaks to the public or interact in this manner. But everybody said, what does it matter? What do you care? What does it matter? I'm going to tell you. You're active on this job. What does it matter? Here you go, real quick. Me and Eric we come to New York City. We go out to dinner. You're a big guy. It's me and Eric, two average-sized guys, right? We go out to dinner. We sit down. Next thing you know, somebody sees us. They take a photo. Oh, look, XYZ was out with John and Eric. Guess what you get hit with? I was arrested twice. Haven't been arrested since a long time, since I'm a kid. I actually served in the New York City Police Department without incident after that. You get hit with a criminal association charge, and someone says you're doing off-duty security and bodyguarding for us. And that's why we were together, right? And then what happens? You say, I didn't bodyguard for them. They run your financial transactions because IEB says that you're involved in narcotics without ever having an allegation of narcotics against you. But, oh, guess what? John McCarry was arrested for narcotics. So there could be a potential nexus. So what they do, they go through your phone records and your bank records. There is not one financial transaction from myself, from any other business, from anyone else other than the New York City Police Department paying your salary, right? And you say, I wasn't doing security for him. And then guess what happens? They say you were doing uncompensated security and you lied to IAB. You gave misleading false statements and you are terminated. That's why it matters, because that's what's going on right now. And for the public to see that what's going on, what they're doing to their own, do you think the public feels safe that, oh, I could face 20 years in jail and they're saying that their investigation, it all led to me, the DNA came back to me? We can't trust these people at all. They need to be removed from office. They cannot hold this power. They are no longer an apolitical organization. And not only put the politics aside, whether you agree with them or you don't agree with them, whatever it may be, put the politics aside. They have zero integrity and they've proven themselves time and time again, not only throughout their careers, but now that they're in the main power structure, to be complete, utter liars. And shame on all of you conservatives that are buttoning up to John Shell. Shame on all of you. And Kaz Daughtry turns my stomach. Absolutely turns my stomach.
That's why exactly the incident that happened at the campus, this accidental discharge, has to be investigated by the FBI. And I don't have a problem. Listen, I do think it's negligence and stupidity. And things do happen. It's the perils of police work. It's the fog of war. Anyone that's been involved in war or police work, mishaps do happen. And we are held accountable. We face up to it. We take our consequences and we move on. But we have to be transparent. That should have been an immediate press conference to say, hey, listen, we addressed this operation, and during this operation, this is what happened. Thank God no one was in close proximity. No one was hurt. We apologize for this infraction. We've addressed it, and we're going to work out the kinks so this doesn't happen again. So now the public has trust in the police department. Hey, they told us immediately. But they were hoping and hiding this. That's why the FBI has to look into this. We have to ask ourselves, why did they hide this? That's the biggest thing. Why did they try to hide this information? It's interesting that Tariq Shepard, the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, said that it didn't come up. He didn't think it was a big deal. It was, if it would have came up organically, I would have addressed it, but it didn't come up. What do you mean it didn't come up? You thought that you actually believed the public would would buy your lies. I guess gaslighting the public, you got used to it. You thought that they would believe this lie. Just think about it, John. Imagine you're at work. You had a commanding officer. You had numerous commanding officers throughout your tenure in policing. Same thing with me. Could you imagine you made a mistake out there doing police work, and your commanding officer, you did not inform him, and then he found out people talking and said, "Hey, did you know such and such happened?" How would he feel? He would feel like he no longer can trust you. No longer would that bond, that relationship of trust between you and your commanding officer would be just completely obliterated. And that's what's going on right now with the public and this administration. If there was any vote of confidence, it's completely gone now because the public is saying, wait a minute, why didn't you tell us this information? If these kids didn't say they heard a gunshot, were you going to tell us about this information? No, this is this is the least transparent administration we have ever seen from the NYPD. Especially, it's ironic in the technological era, an era of artificial intelligence that's growing. We've got body cameras, we have camera footage everywhere, and you're going to try to omit this information? I 100% think the FBI has to look into it and ask themselves why. Did they hide the information because something actually happened bigger, or did they hide it to protect their egos to say that, hey, you know what, we didn't have a flawless operation? And that's okay. It's okay to say you didn't have a flawless operation. You had an operation that you operated to the best of your ability, the best of the police department. There's numerous factors that happen and mistakes happen, and we learn from it. That's what good leaders do. But we don't have good leaders here. And honestly, I think they did it to protect their own egos. I hope if something bigger happened, I would be even more disappointed. But I think it has something to do with their egos.
The majority of these guys have lied, blatantly lied on sworn statements. There's allegations of them cheating on tests to become supervisors. There's numerous sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations against these individuals. They are completely low integrity individuals. I don't believe you could believe anything that comes out of their mouth whatsoever. They lied in criminal trials. So why wouldn't they lie when they're not under sworn oath? They're just lying to the public, and they don't see. I think that's easy for them at that point. They have a thick skin to lie because they've done it so many times. They've done it when their career and their life and their livelihood was on the line. Why wouldn't they do it when none of those things are on the line? You know, they're looking at it. And again, this isn't just Tariq Shepard. This is a team effort here. It takes a lot of people to not leak out that there was an accidental discharge, right? It takes a lot of people to say, yeah, no, we didn't do any threat resistance injury reports. There were no reported injuries, when in fact you did. There's a lot of people involved in that lie. It's Eric Adams and the New York City Police Department against the truth. They're not against the world. They're against the truth. That's what they're fighting. They're fighting. I said it earlier on some post I put out. I said, what they're fighting is they're fighting your perception. They're fighting the truth and your perception, and they're fighting to alter your perception because the truth is not on the side of them. They're not. The truth is not their friend. So that's what they're really against. Eric Adams and his enforcement arm of the New York City is fighting the truth. And anyone that stands in opposition is anyone who asks any question where the truth might come, or someone that actually gives an opinion or speaks the truth. That's what they're doing. Harry Siegel wrote an article. He titled it this, and I think it's perfect. I'm not going to steal his title, but it should be the title of this podcast. Eric Adams cops are functioning as openly political actors and propagandists. And that's bad news, even if you agree with what they're doing. I think he nails it on the head because that's exactly what's going on. They're being political actors. And Eric, I believe in my heart of hearts, they didn't report those things so that photo op looks so much better and it sounds so good. And look at me and look at what I did. It had nothing to do with the rank and file. It's me, me, me. And it has the markings of someone who knows that they're not qualified to be where they are. And they're trying to overcompensate, and they're putting the men and women in the New York City Police Department in harm's way. If it would have had just been reported that there was an accidental discharge, this guy wouldn't be all over the media right now. But now it's a big deal. Now everyone wants to know his name. Now everybody wants to do all this other stuff. And they're making the job of the rank and file of the New York City Police Department much harder than it has to be, and it's because they're inept, they're clumsy, they're liars.
Yeah, going back to what I said, 100%, and piggybacking what you just said, John, 100%. That's what I believe. Egos over everything. I've been saying that podcast after podcast, episode after episode. Egos over everything. I think that it would be extremely difficult to actually protect a lie if some other incident actually happened. Unfortunately, the day of social media, and let's be honest, we were part of the rank and file of the police department, and there's an extreme amount of gossip. There's a lot of drama. Let's be honest. It would be very tough to control a lie and actually that information not get out. And I think this is about the perception. And we say, right, perception versus reality. They wanted perception that this was just a flawless victory, almost like Mortal Kombat. We used to play when you were at the arcade as a game. That's what they wanted. They wanted a flawless victory, right? They didn't want any imperfections and just say, look what I did. Now I get more media coverage, more photo ops. I'm Kaz Daughtry. I get to hold the chain. I'm Cabana. I get to hold the chain. I get another picture. I'm going to be the commissioner. I'm going to be this. I don't know what his aspirations are, but it's all about his own ego. That image is just growing more. That's what I ultimately think this is about. And you know what? I think that's even worse, that they would go this far of a cover-up to protect their egos. It's really sickening when you dig down and think about it. It's sickening that these egos trump public safety. These egos trump transparency. It's really disturbing when you really sit and you think about it. Honestly, I think they're evil. I think they're evil people. I really do. I just that they could do that because, you know, it's one thing to tell a white lie, but that's a big lie. And they all got together and conspired to do this because Tariq Shepard, during his press conference, normally he has a sense of confidence, and he looked extremely nervous. His body language was completely different. He was looking up and down and not as confident with the media. Well, you know, like again, I said, he said, well, what's question number 2? You heard question number 2. It was very clear. And I don't know. I just it was very disappointed in those charades, and the whole thing didn't make sense. Again, to take away from their NYPD's Iwo Jima moment, just absolutely ridiculous. With that being said, you know, let's jump into also. I think their interview. I think that's a great, how they explained it, and as far as what they think right now in the aftermath of the intel that they gathered and the paid agitators. Let's go into that. Let's talk about that point, right? This is the aftermath, and they're talking about the paid agitators, and they believe this is funded, which we knew a long time ago. What are your thoughts on that they're finally willing to admit that, what are we, 6 months into this?
So, Kaz Daughtry, there's a bunch of videos of him out. Just go to his Twitter. It's absolutely hysterical. It's definitely, I think that is the best Twitter handle. I don't follow Kaz. I'm going to actually give you a follow. I don't follow you, but everyone sends me his stuff. So I always get it every day. But it's actually, it has became my favorite Twitter handle because it's hysterical. But I'll just give an example. I have one up of John Shell, right? So this is John Shell. Good evening. From New York to Chicago, and I'm sure there are a few other cities. Who is funding this? Question mark. What is happening? Question mark. There is an unknown entity who is radicalizing our vulnerable students. There are multiple entities, and they're not unknown, and that's a big problem. So, but let me finish what he's saying. He says, as parents and Americans, we must demand answers. I can't speak for the rest of America, but in New York City, we will not rest until we find out. We will broadcast what we see and find. We will use the might of our intelligence bureau and our federal partners to quite simply connect the dots, follow the money. So, everything's a publicity stunt. So what they're doing now is, like I said, I totally, utterly believe that they're going to go after low-level organizers, such as Relly Rebel, Nadine, whatever her name is. They're going to go after people like that, and they're going to identify some sources of money. But it's not going to be the whole source of money because, like I said, I believe a lot of the funding is coming from NGOs, non-government organizations, whose only source of income is grants from the federal and local governments. And they're not going to go after those organizations, right? Because they could be named for the kids and gun violence, whatever it may be, but they're funding these protesters and they're not going to go for that. But what they're telling you right there is they're projecting. We already have people, we're going to lock them up, and then we're going to do our big press conference, this, that. But what's going to happen? You're going to still see the protests. You're still going to see shutdowns of critical infrastructure in New York City. You know, obviously the schools are shutting down, and by the end of this month, they'll all be done. Most of the schools are out already, so you might not see it on the campuses anymore. But you're going to see things heat up on New York City streets, and the arrests that they make will be absolutely nothing. It'll be no different than when they arrest people on the street, except the charges this time, they will be charged appropriately. So to me, when I see them doing that, I just see them projecting that they already know who they're going to lock up and charge. And again, I don't believe that it'll be taking out the head and watching the body fall. I believe they'll just pick in certain pieces because they're not going to go after, like again, Politico, who's, you know, I think they're left leaning, but people say they're down the middle. They're saying that Joe Biden's donors are big funders of this. You telling me that the Biden of Brooklyn is going to go after Joe Biden's donors? I don't think so.
Well, you know what's funny about this whole thing? I think that the police department is going after the low-hanging fruits. You know, like I said, easy ones. Even John Shell said it himself. He said at a press during an interview, we went out, we made arrests. A lot of people we just gave summonses to. So that's an indication to me. They weren't debriefing people. They weren't gathering intelligence, gathering information. They gave summonses to low-level people involved and got them out of there. And I'm sure if they made arrests, those were probably dismissed by the district attorney, Alvin Bragg himself. So they got the low-level hanging fruits. They didn't get anyone of any value to stopping this operation. If anything, you know what I would say? This is like watching a mafia movie. You know when you watch some of these old mafia movies, and some guy thinks he's a tough guy, and he talks to a mobster, and the mobster lets the guy think he won the argument. Okay, buddy, no problem. Have a nice night. You know what? I don't want any problems. And what does the mobster do? Walks away, leaves. He lets the guy think he's a tough guy. He thinks he won, and then the mobster comes back and kills him. Right? That's what's going on with the police department right now. They were celebrating. They got the flag up. They had the Iwo Jima moment. Kaz Daughtry's got the chain. Ed Caban's got the chain. They're celebrating. And the real organizers to these funded organizations are laughing. Look, the police department thinks they won. All we did is gather intelligence and see how they respond. And they put the flag up. We're coming back. This is going to be bigger and worse than it was. And I think they're laughing, just like you see in a monster movie, and they're coming back for the real deal. I think that the police department is foolish, and they look foolish, and I think that these organizers want them to believe that they won. And they actually believe that they won. They're not seeing the long game in this. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, that's what it is, dude. That's exactly what it is. They don't see the long game, you know? And even, it's funny to me, and I'm going to pat myself on the back here a little bit, because I normally don't, but you didn't hear anything about page agitators, and you didn't hear anything about funding or following the money until I did that Newsmax interview right when everything broke out. And what did I say? I said the police department is completely missing the mark. They need to go after who's funding this organization. Forget the low-level stuff. Who's funding it? Who's going after it? Former intelligence sergeant was on that panel with me. It was Chris Schramm. He wrote Brooklyn and Baghdad. Good book. I've been drip drab reading it, but it's a very good book. I mean, I've been actually outlining it. It's a very great book. And he backed the same thing up. He said that why aren't we gathering intelligence from them? This should be very simple to find out who's funding this and all that. And then you heard it. You heard it all after that, because it became very obvious to them at that point, and it was very obvious to a lot of people at that point, is that they're just circling the wagons around nonsense. They're pointing to the kids. They're pointing to the bull crap. And now they're basically continuing their charade and continuing the gaslighting. It's just a continuation of gaslighting by them saying, oh, now we're going to go after, there's a nefarious entity. Notice they're only saying one thing. So what are you saying? You're saying that some of those teachers didn't radicalize people? Because they definitely did. Maybe they didn't pay them. Maybe they're not paying them. But how did those students come in contact with those nefarious actors? Most of them came by the faculty. And again, one of the people that is going to run, a very important person, the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence for the New York City Police Department, is part of that faculty. It's a huge conflict of interest. I mean, you can say what you want, you know, say what you want. It's like having, it's literally like you have a corruption problem in the NYPD. Let's go take it back to the late 80s, early 90s. The mafia is still prevalent in New York City. And you have someone who's a member of the Gambino family. Are you going to make that person the chief of internal affairs? Now, you don't know that, like, they might not be involved, but I mean, there's a pretty big conflict of interest. Your uncle's John Gotti and your last name's Gotti, and you go, you know, you can't help who your family is, but am I really gonna appoint that guy to oversee all this? You just can't do it, regardless if they're great or they're not. You just can't do it. It's too much.
Let me give you a rhetorical scenario. I'm not saying this happened, but what if you were the police commissioner of a police department and your brother had a state liquor authority in a restaurant? And what if your brother actually was just an owner on paper, and there was another gentleman that owned it, another person of interest that owned it, and this person was actually had mob ties and had ties to drugs, possible murders, things of that sort, and he was a constituent hanging around high-level members of the police department. Is that possible? Is that possible? Would that be a conflict of interest? Would that be a problem for the police department? That might be. I mean, is that possible? Can we have something like that? I don't know. Maybe we should ask Sal Greco if he knows anything about a restaurant that's operating with potential criminal behavior and befriending the police department. Would that be a conflict of interest for marsh operations, which are operations where the police department goes into different bars and restaurants to make sure that everything's up to code, where they check liquor bottles to make sure that people aren't dancing to maximum occupancy and capacity. So God forbid we don't have another incident like Happy Land where people are going to, God forbid, die of fires. Is that possible? That's why I think it's so interesting, and everyone should be perturbed that the police department is omitting several key factors, information. They omitted the accidental discharge, which I think is terrible. But I honestly think that this is even worse. I think the fact that they omitted that she is the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and also faculty at this campus is far worse of an omission than this actual accidental discharge, because she is a member of that faculty. She has inside information of what's going on out there that could specifically be related to the police department, or she could be related information back and forth. I think this is far more egregious, and this just shows the breakdown in this administration, that this administration is not capable of doing their job, and they're not to be trusted. That's number one. And you said something earlier, John. I think we have to I have to give you credit. I think you nailed it on the head. I think that's the best statement that you've made ever since we're doing this podcast right now. I'm not kidding. You said that the administration right now under Mayor Eric Adams is a battle against the truth. I think that is the best way to put it. That's 100% what they do. They fight the truth. Anyone that tries to give the truth that is in opposition of their lies to try to direct the information towards a specific path for this administration, they will come after you. And that's how it started with us. We put out information that is true. It's critical and it's opinionated, but it's true. And I think that's the best statement you made.
I also think the fact that this whole "we need the letter," I'm telling you, man, that really bothers me. We need the letter from the campus unless it's an emergency, while at the same time they're admitting that there are assaults, people being held hostage. Kids aren't allowed to go to school because of their religion or how they look, or if they feel like that they're too American or they're not part of the cause. They're admitting all that, and that's not an emergency. And by the way, they're breaking into buildings, causing damage, fire hazards. They're putting bags in the windows. I mean, they're cutting out all the cameras. The New York City Police Department doesn't see this as an emergency, and they're putting out all these flyers that they're going to occupy the city. We don't think that this is an emergency. I mean, that really bothered me. The other thing that really bothers me, and I don't think we touched on it, is that in the beginning of this, they were saying they couldn't go in with Colombia, saying that Colombia didn't cooperate with them. Colombia wouldn't cooperate. Colombia doesn't want us there. Colombia is not cooperating with us. And what happens the day after? So for a week, they tell you Colombia is not cooperating. This is Colombia's fault. They want to do their job, but they can't lie, right? And I said, I don't know that Colombia wants them or doesn't want them. I just know what they're saying. But what do they say the next day? Colombia is great. We've been in contact with them the whole time. It's like, wait a minute. Time out. You said that for a week that they didn't help you. You said for a week they didn't help you. Now you're saying you were in conjunction with them the entire time. And they were great, and the faculty is great, and all that, they're great. And again, it's just a lie. Everything that they do and say is a lie. And they're now leading up to that next lie. Look what we did. Look at this operation we did. But they're doing this with the major players. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, I didn't see that at Caban's Brothers. This. And I got news. I a ton of people like, listen, I understand South Point with Consafritos. I completely understand it. He got fired for way less than what you guys were all doing. He got fired for absolutely nothing. He actually got fired for not doing what you guys are doing, but he was accused of what you guys are doing. So I understand all of that. And to me, I hear people all the time, all like, why does he care? I'm like, why does he care? I was like, if I'm the police commissioner and that's my brother, that's my best friend, that's anybody else, and you're embarrassing me like that, I'm gonna make the police department, the fire department slam you harder than I would someone I didn't know. Pay the fines and put everything up. You ever embarrass me again, I'll make sure your business is getting shut down. Don't ever bring your nonsense around my name. I'm in charge of running the New York City Police Department, the largest police department in the world. You have the same last name as me, and you're going to embarrass me? But no, that didn't happen. What happened? We had Sal on tell a story. Sal comes on often. We're about to start up another podcast with Sal. It's going to be called The Expendables. That'll be coming on a different network. You'll see that soon. And but I can't believe that the lack of the apathy in men, that they're like, oh, it's perfectly acceptable for the police commissioner to not do anything for his brother, for the New York City Police Department to throw parties there, for the Internal Affairs Bureau of the New York City Police Department, who has an open investigation to investigate them, even though they had parties at that location, right? They're openly, how's that not a conflict of interest? But it's perfectly acceptable to everyone. Like, no, what's the big deal? I mean, this is the standard that we have for the New York City Police Department's police commissioner. These are the people that are running it. This is the dream team. These people aren't even, they wouldn't even be a good high school team. They wouldn't be a good junior high school team. They'd be like Division III junior high school teams. They play in like the C League.
Let's talk about conflict of interest, right? And we talk about lie after lie after lie. You know what? It turns out they weren't lying, right? What did they say? First, they did say that they're not getting guidance from the faculty. They're impeding. They're not assisting them so that they can take action at the campus. And they said, and then after the aftermath after everything was wrapped up, they said that, well, we were in contact with them the whole time. It turns out that was the truth. They were in contact with them the whole time. Why? Because the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence is a faculty member. So that part was true. But how they lied about the whole entire thing. But why? Are you telling me that you couldn't tell the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence? Hey, let's rhetorically speaking, let's say that Paul Revere letter was true, which we know is complete gaslighting and lie. Let's say it's true. Let's pretend the police department cannot do anything at a campus unless they get information and they get the permission of faculty and they get a letter. The Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence could not provide the information of what's going on at her place of employment as a professor and give them a small little letter right here. Listen, we need you to go fix this. That's why lie after lie in this administration just cannot be trusted. That's why I think that this omission is actually far more egregious than actually the admission about the accidental discharge. I think this is far worse and far more sinister. And really we need a deep dive to look into why they hide this information. That's some valuable information that someone would want to know. Wait a minute. The Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence. You and I just did a podcast, and we're talking about intelligence gathering, how vital that would be to this operation should the police department go in. You and I we foreshadow the information time after time. That's why the police department thinks that we have confidential information and that we have confidential informants, is because we have hit the mark. We've foreshadowed everything. The police department failed to tell the public that they have inside information. I was asking you, John, is it funny on a prior podcast? I said, do you think they have undercovers inside the campus and gathering intelligence? Who knew? The whole time we had one there. Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence. She's a professor. She's a professor. The whole time we had the inside information.
All right, look what they did. They lied about the crime stats. They lie about the quality of life. They lie about everything that's going on. They lie about their retention rate. They lie about everything, every single thing. I personally believe they should be removed and charged. I believe these are high crimes. I truly do. And again, if you guys did that, if we did that when we were employed, we would be removed from office so fast. It's not funny. And again, I'm going to go back to the biggest hypocrisy of all. Most of them didn't have to put in their body what you had to put in yours. And you're perfectly okay with it. You're like, oh, no, it was Bill de Blasio's rule. Eric had no choice. He just came in as the mayor, and he had to enforce it. He had to terminate everybody. He had to lie and deny all your religious exemptions, but not his friends, who didn't even have to put them in. They just didn't even take it. Nobody cares. The apathy is sick. And then he goes to Staten Island the other day, and he gets one question instead of all the bootlicking, disgusting conservative Joe Borelli, whoever the borough president is now, Lanza, that those two soft, fat-bodied state assemblymen, one's a retired Lieutenant Mike Riley, to Newsis, that they are progressive light. They're friends of the progressive department. Staten Island GOP, if any of you guys are listening to this, you're pathetic. You're absolutely disgusting. Every candidate you have, Nicole Maliotakis, they are horrendous. Horrendous. So they have the mayor at this town hall in Annandale. Sorry I couldn't make it. I would have loved to have been there. But one lady gets a question out. And the question she says is, you're up here and you're saying how un-American it is to not let illegal aliens work when you're actively fighting to not allow the thousands of people that you harmed during this mandate. You're actively fighting it. How do you rectify that? What does he say, Eric? It's not me. I didn't put that rule in place. I'm not fighting that. That's Corporation Counsel. Are you kidding? He's making Corporation Counsel indemnify him in a sexual assault allegation when he wasn't even on duty. When he was a cop in the 80s, never happened. He's making them indemnify all his friends for sexual assault allegations not related to the New York City Police Department. He completely controls Corporation Counsel, and he's fighting that rule tooth and nail. And it's illegal. The thing was deemed illegal, and he's continuing to fight it, and he will fight it to the day he's out of office. Absolutely disgusting. And these are the people that you're like, yeah, no, they're telling you that New York City Mayor Eric Adams doing a great job. I guarantee you when they go to that Whitestone Republican Club, John Shell, Joe, and Patrice will be saying how great of a job Eric Adams is going to do. Joe's going to say how great this leadership team is. And honestly, they're disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Joe, if you're listening to this, I was like having second thoughts. I know your organization's good, all this other thing. I know you do a lot of good things for sick kids. But when it comes to actually the truth and actually helping the rank and file or pushing back on any of this nonsense, you don't do any of it. It's all about you, bro. It's all about the show. It's all about that. I think you said that I was trying to make a name for myself. And I said to you then, if I was trying to make a name for myself, I wouldn't be doing anything that I'm doing now. I would be doing exactly what you're doing. Staying good. Oh, I back the blue. Shake everyone's hand. Tell everybody what a great job Eric Adams is doing. And I would have been flying, bro. I would have been way past you, my friend. But I just couldn't do it. And like, to me, it's absolutely disgusting. Like that comes out, and again, it just shows Eric both sides of his mouth. Wasn't me.
I mean, that's what we see from Eric Adams. We don't know what he's for. We don't know what he's against. He never takes responsibility or accountability for anything. Eric Adams, since his inception as mayor, he blames everyone else and every other entity for the pitfalls of the NYPD, other agencies of New York City, and New York City as a whole. All the pitfalls that are going on, the migrant crisis, he never takes responsibility or accountability, ever. Always points to blame. Does he take responsibility or accountability for the vaccines? Absolutely not. Always points to blame. Does he take any responsibility or accountability for crime ticks? Absolutely not. For getting caught lying about the numbers, does he take responsibility or accountability? No. He doesn't have it in him. He does, and that's why, again, that's why I say what you said before is the most accurate statement, and I love it, and we have to use that. They are fighting the truth because the truth goes against everything this administration stands for. This administration doesn't stand for the truth. This administration doesn't stand for this transparency. You know what this administration stands for? It stands for the king. It's all about Mayor Eric Adams. And that's what Kaz Daughtry's learned. That's why you hear, I did this, I did that. Again, there's no bad troops. There's only bad leaders, and it's at every level. And at Kaz Daughtry and John Shell, for them at their level, they're learning from Eric Adams to be the monarch, to be the king. Pound your chest. Let people know who you are. Fight the truth. Protect yourself. Protect the ego. That's what they're learning. And who's learning it? Everyone down the chain. The entire police department has been affected with this unprofessionalism. Again, I say it all the time. I'll say it again. In order for an organization to thrive, we need good leadership. You want to see an organization crumble? Look at the leadership. And this is, it just is in your face like we've never seen before. It's absolutely despicable. It's disgusting. I'm tired of seeing it. Honestly, I want to see this overhaul immediately. I want to see them in handcuffs because what they're doing, it really is. It's just completely despicable. You said it's high crimes. It sure is. Again, if it was you, if it was me, it was Sal Greco, we would be in handcuffs so fast. Can we not say that? Absolutely. We would see a completely different standard. But what's the standard here? What does it say? What are they saying? They're saying that leadership, when you're in their position, it counts. It makes a difference. They're doing it because they can. And they're letting everybody know it also.
So numerous members of New York City Council are now calling for John Shell to either be removed or heavily disciplined for his actions online. I 100% believe that discipline is in order for those. I don't think that he should be removed because of those, but for exactly what happened to myself and Eric, I believe that not only he should be removed, but he should be charged. And that goes for Kaz Daughtry and Edward Caban himself. So that's my thoughts on it. What do you think about just the tweets he did against New York City Council members?
Well, absolutely. I think it's unprofessional. I think it's completely unprofessional. They're supposed to be stoic. I think it's disgusting. Absolutely, they should be disciplined, and I think they should be demoted for that because they're not professional. I don't think they should be in that position. It's such an esteemed position to have that amount of power. They obviously have used it. They don't know how to handle it. I don't think that they should be terminated for that. But coupled with what happened with us, absolutely, there should be termination and there should be charges for crimes. Absolutely. I think that's why I say the council. I do believe that the city council is referring to us because I believe that they jumped on it as additive factors. Because if this didn't happen to us, just alone, these tweets, these pissing matches, it's disgusting, it's unprofessional, it's unbecoming. But would it rise to the level that the Department of Justice or Department of Investigations would get involved? I don't think so. So I think when you couple this all together, I think that it's I think that's why the city council has acted to this point so strongly.
Who do you think is behind this? Like, we got attacked first. That's without a doubt. I don't care what the media says. Harry, if you listen to this, you were not the first person to get attacked. We were getting attacked months prior to you. But who do you think ultimately, if you had to put your money on it, who do you think is behind this, who concocted this entire plan? We're going to go out on social media.
Eric Adams, absolutely. 1,000%. Absolutely. I say all the time, no bad troops, no bad leaders. No bad troops is bad leaders. Absolutely. I think this is all under Eric Adams. Absolutely. Would you agree?
I think so. Yeah. He said it perfect, right? The commissioners run their organizations. They run their respective agencies. I run the commissioners. I think it comes from him, but I think he kind of gave the pat on the back to the #1 draft pick for the Dream Team, the chauffeur extraordinaire, nephew Kaz Daughtry. And I think that he gave him the pat on the back to go out there, because I do think I see a lot of Kaz and Shell emulating the tweets that myself and you put out. You know, I see a lot of the same topics. I tweet about it, Kaz tweets about it. You tweet about it, Shell tweets about it. I tweet about it, Shell tweets about it. You tweet about it, Kaz tweets about it. And you see it, and it's almost like, it's just like reverb words. And now they're getting like a little smarter. They have their speech writers like trying to put it together. Because I'll tell you, some of those tweets I know that you didn't do, Kaz, for 100%. But I just think it's pathetic, man. You got anything else on this? Because I think we beat it up enough. I got a couple other things.
Yeah, I just want to say with this, like I said, I think that Mayor Eric Adams spearheaded this entire social media bullying tactics. But I think that why we see it so exacerbated, and that's why I think that Eric Adams is pretty smart when it comes to picking his circle of how he orchestrated this administration. I think it's going in the direction that he wants. They're exactly that. They're useful idiots. And moving Kaz Daughtry up in this position makes complete sense for him, because he lacks maturity. He doesn't have the experience of public relations campaigns. He doesn't understand. So it's exacerbated even more because the level of immaturity. And I think that's what Eric Adams wants. Because again, what does Eric Adams do? If this does get so bad, if the Department of Justice says, listen, these guys have to be removed, and Eric Adams gets the finger starts pointing at Eric Adams, what is he going to say? I didn't do it. Guys did. That's not my tweet, right?
Absolutely. It wasn't me.
Wasn't me.
It wasn't me. Wasn't me.
Yeah. So you know what? That's a word to the wise. Like I said, I don't want to give advice there, but Kaz and John Show, he's treating you as useful idiots. I think it's smart on Eric Adams' part. He's going to wipe his hands clean. I didn't tell him to do that. Listen, I empathize with them. I understand they're getting attacked. You know, they had a cop murdered. But I didn't tell him what to write. I mean, he did. That's not my social media account. It's his. And I think that's how it's going to play out.
Sounds about that. I wouldn't argue with you. I wouldn't argue with you at all. Yeah, absolutely. This guy. I mean, we did the episode, the Fall Guy, right? Did we do the Fall Guy 2? I think we did. We did
two of them. We had Fall Guy and part 2. And if John Show, if you have an opportunity, you can watch it again. It's on YouTube, it's Spotify, whichever one you like. I'm not sure. No one has told us yet which platform you choose. But if you're tired of looking at our faces, you can always look at listen to it on Spotify where you're driving to work, or Apple, whatever you choose.
This calls for a Chief Token Paleface meme. I think we got to get that out there. We'll get that out there tomorrow. Chief Token Paleface meme incoming. You know, the Fall Guy, Chief Token Fall Guy Paleface. What do you think about? Well, I know what you think about, but I still want to hear it anyway. I don't even think we spoke about it.
I love it.
The end of combat parking.
Oh my God! Here we go. This is
parking. Rest in peace, combat parking. We put a meme out, went pretty viral. And I think, I personally think I requoted the meme, and I said that response. I said complaints against on-duty and off-duty police officers when it relates to parking is going to rise significantly. That's what I said.
Yeah, and I say that I have put a tweet out, as a joke, sarcasm, saying, in years to come, we're going to say, hey, remember when response times were under 10 minutes? Because that's what's going to happen. If this legitimately happens, to people out there like Placard Corruption, he's probably one of the biggest in opposition of parking for the police department. He's all over our tweets, right? Hey, listen, Placard Corruption, if you're watching this, I cordially invite you on this podcast, as I did several times. I'd love to have you on here. I want to hear your perspective on this. But what you don't understand is the law enforcement perspective. Seconds in policing count. Seconds can save lives. Seconds could be the key to prosperity for public safety. The reason why we do the combat parking is so that the vehicle is accessible and we can get that vehicle used in seconds. Police officers are able to jump into that car, take off, and head to a call. But could you imagine we had cars parallel parked? And now we know how New York City is, especially when I used to work in the Bronx. Double parking, triple parking is part of the culture there. Good luck trying to stop it. But your car, you're going to an emergency call to save a baby, and you can't get into your car because there's a car double parked and triple parked blocking your car. Seconds, minutes. It's easy to say until you actually understand what police work is. And if you don't know what police work is and you're being critical, that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. You suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect. So yes, it's a joke, but I do think that if this actually goes to effect, we're going to be saying, wow, remember when response times were less than 10 minutes? Unless they have some other plan of artificial intelligence, or Kaz Daughtry has his drones to go up to save response times, this is a bad, bad look. If this is the opportunity for the mayor himself to stand up, and he's not going to do it, Mayor Eric Adams should say, you know what? Sue my city, Department of Justice. Go ahead. Sue my city, sue my police department. We don't care. We're going to ignore it. We're going to combat park because it means lives on the line. And public safety is number one. So sue my city. I don't care. But he won't do that.
No, and then like the day after that, all that came out, like combat parking was done. Like they're parallel parking currently. So it's going to lead to more people like Placard Corruption and Gersh Kuntzman, their sole focus is they're worried about how cops park. That's the biggest thing in their mind in New York City. That is the utmost importance, how police officers park. And I do agree. I understand that it's not ADA compliant to have cops park, combat park. It's not for the American with Disabilities Act or for elderly people. They may need to walk around. But there's ways around that, right? We have station house security. You could put people outside too, to walk those people around, to make sure they get to where they got to get safely. Maybe if it's across the street, wheelchair them, whatever it may be. You could have officers to help those people. I personally think that the citizens, especially in the city commands, are going to go insane because you are going to take up like 2-3 city blocks of just department vehicles, never mind their own personal cars when they come in. They're going to go. It's going to actually make it worse. And that's why I'm saying that there's going to be more complaints against on-duty and off-duty cops for parking. It's going to be that. And 100%, Eric, response times are going up. You hit the nail on the head with that. They're going up. I think it might even be longer than that because you don't know that dynamic is there so that you could get a quick response in and out. And the exchange of vehicles, I do think you could make the exchange of vehicles. You could offset it. You could bring people in at different times. You could stagger people to possibly do that. But good luck doing that when your manpower's short, when the morale's down, when people are leaving, when you can't even retain the rookies that you get on the job. Good luck doing that. Good luck. You're not going to be able to do it, but that is an option to stagger. But you still have some of those vehicles that are on standby or ready for a detail or ready for something else that need to be parked somewhere. And like you said, they're going to get jammed in. They're not going to be able to get out. Can't respond. I'm blocked in. It's going to happen over and over. Response time.
I mean, this is ridiculous. Even when we were on the job, even years ago, I came on the job in January 2004. Even back then, when things were good, we were getting far more support. Even back then, I remember the commanding officers that I had being pretty cognizant of their precincts and nomenclature and the surrounding area. And back then, they would say, "Don't clog up bus stops. Don't park in fire hydrants." Even then, and I understand. I understand the American Disabilities Act, which I support because there's many veterans that are affected by that. But what's the percentage of people that are actually in those type of conditions that need those accommodations? I don't know what the percentage. It's few, but that's why I agree with you that they should be treated fairly and get accommodations from the police department. They should not be affected by it. But I do agree that it's so far and few in between that the police department could address it. And I remember I said something like this years ago. This is before the intelligence that we have now and the artificial intelligence and the technology that we have. I said this years ago that there could be some type of just like you a crosswalk when you press a button so that the traffic light can acknowledge a sensor that acknowledges that someone has to walk. There could be a button about a block before a precinct where someone, if they're in a wheelchair, it could be low enough that they could press. It could be accessible, and maybe send a sensor to the desk at the precinct to let them know that someone needs help, and that someone from the precinct could be sent out to assist this person to get them access. I believe that it's something that the police department could do case by case basis. I don't believe that we're having thousands of people in wheelchairs that need that accommodation. That's what I think. I think ultimately we have to go with the overwhelming majority. The overwhelming majority of New York City residents need response times over the capability of someone getting through the sidewalk. Yes, they should be helped, but we have to weigh out different factors, the totality of circumstances. We have to keep public safety moving. And the most important thing is that combat parking is accessible for the police officers. Seconds count. And we don't have the infrastructure. New York City wasn't designed for the precincts to have parking lots or to be in a position in rural or suburban areas where the police department has access in a different manner. Just the dynamic of the metropolis that we live in, it wouldn't be effective. It would cost billions of dollars. It's too far gone. I think that would be the best case. Is why don't we address how do we help the people in need with their disabilities rather than making the police department move? I think if we outweigh the cost and the means, I think that's a better way to go. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, most of these precincts were built very early 1900s. People didn't have cars. So, and that's just what it is, that like there's no room for parking, and the combat parking actually minimizes the footprint of the New York City Police Department in that neighborhood. By opening that up, it actually expands the footprint and makes the parking worse. It actually adds to it much worse. It adds to actually creates traffic as well, on top of the response time. So I think it's absolutely horrible. I don't think if there was a real leader in the mayor's office or in the New York City Police Department, they wouldn't adhere to it. They would actually fight it. They would do what Eric Adams normally does, is where he challenges the rule. But, again, he never does it. He only does it when it benefits him. And when he doesn't, he pretends there's nothing he could do. And that's what they're going to do here. They don't care because it doesn't affect them, right? They're going to have someone sitting outside for them in their chauffeured Suburban or their chauffeured brand new Durango. They got 24/7 posts in front of their houses. They don't care. They're operating kings. They're going up on TV, lying to everybody every day. Nothing's happening to them. And so this administration that's supposedly there, because I heard over and over again how they were going to make things better for cops. The unions were telling you guys that, and they've done nothing but make everything significantly worse. And they'll do nothing to stand up for you when the time comes. And here's just a perfect example of how they're not. So good luck to you all. I don't know what like that. To me, that's just another shows just how inept and how little they understand the nomenclature of the New York City Police Department and how New York City actually functions and why it's important that we do actually combat park. What's the reason for that, and it actually is beneficial to the community more than it harms them.
Like John said, I agree with you. I actually think that the advocates that are in opposition of police parking at precincts, the combat parking, and this overtaking of the block that surrounds the precinct to accommodate police parking for emergencies, it's so progressive in this push that it's actually becoming regressive. And I think that if they're making this push to just completely obliterate this combat parking, I do believe it's going to become like an autonomous zone, that it's going to extend further, like you said. Maybe it will be 3 blocks to the left, 3 blocks to the right. And now, instead of a precinct having 1 block where it's encompassed with police parking, you're going to have 3 blocks that is going to be completely police related. And it's definitely going to be, I think, an eyesore also for people that live there. And it could cost maybe bring the value down of their homes, things like that, because now you live Now, instead of being a block away from the precinct, now you live 3 blocks away, and that's completely encompassed by the police. I think that's exactly what you said. I think it's actually pushing the mark further back because people just don't understand it because they're not looking at it from a public safety perspective. It's just a complete disdain for police, and they look at it as, well, why do police have amenities that we don't have? But they're not seeing the big picture because they don't understand it, and it's never been explained to them. That's why I say Mayor Eric Adams, who was a cop himself, who rose to the rank of captain, who better than to give this information to the city than this particular mayor? But he's not doing it. Again, he misses the mark because it's all about him.
So, yeah, no, I agree with you. So last thing, I think when we get out of here, because I think we're going with 2 hours, but I just want to talk about this real quick. I think it's a good, I'm Roman Catholic, you're Jewish, so I think this is a good stance to talk about a piece of legislation that the House, United States Congress House just passed, right? It's called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act of 2023. I always say that we don't need more laws. We just need to enforce the ones that we have on the books. So this bill, HR 6090, voted on by numerous, I think 187 House Republicans. Out of New York, it was Mike Lawler, Mark Molinaro, Nicole Maliotakis, and Anthony D'Esposito, former NYPD detective at 7-5, I believe. This guy votes Democrat almost every single time. I don't even know how he's considered a Republican. Same for Nicole Maliotakis. I don't know how she's considered a Republican. But whatever, they passed this, right? There's a lot of anti-Semitism going around. I agree with it. I keep saying that you cannot bring down hate crimes without bringing down all crime. Hate crime is a byproduct of allowing crime. That's what my personal feelings on it. So they come in with this act, and they don't define what anti-Semitism is. What they say is that it provides the authority for the requirement to take into consideration the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, their working definition of anti-Semitism when reviewing and investigating the complaints based on race, color, national origin, and things of that nature. So that they won't give an actual definition. They're saying that the International Holocaust Museum's definition is the definition of anti-Semitism. But according to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, a definition of anti-Semitism is claims of Jews killing Jesus. Now, as a Roman Catholic, I was, yes, Pontius Pilate did ultimately do it, but did ultimately commit the final act and crucify Jesus. But I was always taught that Jesus, who was a Jew, was crucified by the Jews. And I'll just reach into one verse in the Bible, and there are numerous of these, by the way. In almost every book, there's a different author, whether it's John, whether it's Matthew, whether it's Paul. They interpret this their own way, but they tell the same story. So here's one. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe, and they went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they slapped him in the face. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, "Look, I am bringing him out there to let you know that I find no basis for charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and a purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify, crucify." But Pilate answered them, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis of charge against him." The Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law, he must die because he claimed he is the Son of God." That is John 19, verses 1 to 7. Eric, what do you think about that law?
It's interesting that you say that. Well, I think that we shouldn't be mixing religion and this law. Absolutely not. And I don't think it matters what your religion is. I don't think it makes a difference if you are Catholic or you're Jewish or you're Muslim. But in this case, I think we're mixing the two. I don't think we should mix them at all. I think that again, don't we talk about the division of church and state? And I mean, I don't see it. What about yourself?
I mean, to me personally, I think it's a complete. I think the law is horrible. I don't think it'll do anything to combat anti-Semitism. Again, I believe that hate crimes are a byproduct of crimes, where we allow crimes, so you will receive hate crimes because people can do it, whatever their reasoning is, right? If I smack you in the head with the bat because I don't like you, or I smack you in the head with the bat because I don't like you because you're Jewish, ultimately, I slapped you in the head with the bat. I should have to face consequence. But when people feel there's no consequence, I'll do both. I'll slap you in the head with a bat because I don't like you, or because I don't like your race, your ethnicity, or your national origin. So I don't feel like these laws are helping anything. But to me, it's disturbing because I feel like it's a complete government overreach. These people are Catholic, right? They're Christian that passed this law. And I'm like, well, my belief is that the Jews crucified Jesus. And you're outlawing that. You're saying that me partaking in my religion is anti-Semitism, you know, and I find it a huge government overreach. And I just find, what is it going to do to combat anti-Semitism by creating this law? I think it muddies the waters. And then I think it could possibly even create more anti-Semitism. Like, hey, wait, you're attacking me. This is my religion. It's more, again, like of a division. It's more of this like Marxist, like putting people into groups, tribalism. It's like, well, hey, now you're attacking me. You're attacking my verse in the Bible. You're saying that Bible verse is anti-Semitism. According to that law that the House just passed, that Bible verse is anti-Semitism. Me speaking that Bible verse in church is anti-Semitism. Again, I should have the ability to speak my mind. I don't think is anti-Semitism wrong? Yeah, it is. But at the end of the day, is hating black people wrong? Yeah, it is. Is hating gay people wrong? Yeah, it is. But there is freedom of speech in this country, and I'm an absolutist when it comes to it. I really am.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned it now. I was going to mention before. I didn't want to get you all riled up about it. But when I first saw this, law, that's why I said I don't think they should mix religion and state. But when I first saw this law, honestly, I wasn't even thinking about this as much. But you know what first came to my mind? The vaccine mandate. That's what came to my mind, honestly, because how can the government interpret religion? And I feel like that's what happened. That's why I didn't even want to mention it. But now that we're going to mention it, I feel like when it came to these reasonable accommodations, that the job was interpreting your religion and what your thoughts are on it. I mean, that's why I don't think they should be mixed. How can they interpret what your beliefs are? If you're Catholic and those are your beliefs, but you're Jewish, those are your beliefs. I mean, there are Jews for Jesus. I'm not saying I agree that exists, but that's someone's belief. So how can you mix the two? That's the part. I mean, do you agree that I think you kind of look at this with the vaccine? I think that how can you assess what is what belief? So now the government is going to say what is anti-Semitism? I mean, what if you're a Jew that hates Jews? Could you be? You could be a black that hates other blacks.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't get it. I don't get it. Like I think I don't even think that they like my bigger thing is like we're just such a dumbed down society that honestly, Eric, I really don't even think they realized what they were creating. This was gaslighting. This was like an NYPD. Like the way I look at it like this is just, we're going to do something. So we said we did something, not because it's actually going to help anything. And when they did that stupid thing, that photo op moment, that gaslighting moment, they didn't even realizing that they were basically outlawing the New Testament and the basis of belief, one of the basis of beliefs for 1 billion Christians or 2 billion Christians. I'm like, this is how dumb we've been dumbed down in society.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. How can you mix the religion and state? I mean, because even with even a religion, you have different sects and different ideologies that don't agree with each other, right? I mean, you have reform. When it comes to Jewish, you have Reformed, you have Conservative, you have Orthodox, you have Hasidic. These are all different sects, and many of them have different beliefs within that religion. I know you're Catholic. I think, am I right? You have different sects amongst the Catholics also, right? So,
yeah.
So which one is which? I don't know. I think it's crazy. I mean, I don't. I guess I'm glad you said it because I was kind of wondering why did they make this? It doesn't. I don't get it. But just to say they did something,
it's what the NYPD, they're playing politics. Look at us. No incidents. Look what we did. Oh, anti-Semitism continues to rise. Well, it wasn't me. I passed this bill. Oh, the bill that outlawed the New Testament.
It's crazy. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's crazy. Like, how do you mix religion? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. When does politics have gone too far? I mean, they're going to tell the priest how to conduct his mass, what to say, what he can't say? I don't know. What if he says
if he reads that verse, it's anti-Semitism?
Well, that's what I'm saying. What if he says at the mass, you know what? I hate Jews. I'm not saying that's right, but what if he says it? He could say it.
Say it. It's free.
Don't believe in Jews.
Outlawed. Yeah, it created. I don't know. I thought it like correlated a lot to like it just shows like what politicians do. They just to say they did something, they do anything. Doesn't even make sense. None of this will not stop the rise of hate crimes in the country, and I won't stop the rise of hate against anti-Semitism. It does nothing but other than these guys get their moment of look how brave I am. I passed this bill that outlawed the verse that I just read in church on Sunday, and they don't even realize they did it because it's so stupid. I just thought it was really funny. And just to go back on the mandate, I mean, the government can't tell you. I mean, the law literally is that is if you request a reasonable accommodation, it must be given to you. The only reason it can't be given to you is if it creates an undue hardship to that organization. But basically what that underlining is if you give it to one person, that's it. You give it to, and that's what happened with the Leviticus law with the beard. You give it to one person. Now I can't say, oh, Eric is religious and John isn't. So Eric can have the beard and John can't. And that's why they opened that law, that Leviticus law. And the same applies to reasonable accommodations for anything, including that mandate. But what they did is they said, Eric's good. He can continue in his career. John can't. So they violated the law. Eric Adams violated the law. And what he's doing is hiding behind the fact that Bill de Blasio implemented it, forgetting that he enforced it. He enforced it longer than any mayor in the country, enforced it when he didn't have to enforce it. He was under no obligation to follow that. It was a stupid thing that Bill de Blasio wrote. He could have just pulled it down that day. Not only did he enforce that, then he went on the private sector. And then after that, now he's like, it's not me, it's Corporation Counsel. When he knows full well, he just put the people back with back pay, and that's it. It's over. And he saves the city hundreds of millions of dollars by doing that. And he actually takes away the gap of all these workers that are missing that they can't fill jobs for. But he won't do it. He's spending more money in court to fight those people from going back to work than if he just gave them all back pay with a settlement and put them back to work. He's spending more money to fight it. So, I mean, the government, what we're seeing today is there's a complete overreach, local, federally, and the people, the right-wing conservatives, that the people who have a charge of the House, they're just as guilty. They're progressive light. This is where we're going. More government, not less. It's not a good look.
That's why I have to, shout out to our brother Mighty Fuzz. If he watches this, that's why, 2 hours and 8 minutes, you have an opportunity to look at it, brother. Just to, shout out, because I agree with what he says. Like, there's too much government, and when he says we the people, especially when it comes to things like this, like, I just don't get it. Like, to me, it almost seems like we have HIPAA laws, right, to protect you from exposing your medical conditions private. But your religious beliefs, I think that's very private to some people too. They don't like to discuss what their religious beliefs. So why would you? I thought it was the craziest thing when I saw the guys that worked for me when they were writing down their reasonable accommodations. I remember I was like, "What are you doing?" And like, "Oh, I'm writing down like why I shouldn't get the vaccine." I'm like, I just thought that was the craziest thing. I'm like, you should put I'm Catholic, I don't want it, or I'm Jewish. Like, why do you have to put like? So what if John? What if you put I'm Catholic and I believe in A, B, C, and D. What if it's completely like wrong? It doesn't. That's not even in the Bible. But that's what you believe. and then I put something down that's I'm Catholic, and I cite something from Matthew, and it's verbatim, but I pulled it out of the book. Does it matter? I mean, would I be a bad Catholic if I said I believe in Catholicism, and I tell you what I believe in, but I'm completely wrong? But I believe in it. I go to church every weekend. Am I not worthy of a reasonable accommodation? That's why I think this is crazy.
No, you absolutely are. And the thing with the religious accommodation is one, you don't have to belong to any church, and your beliefs don't have to adhere to any religion, whether you're a part of that religion or not. So like I had a guy, I won't blow him up, but he's a gay guy. He's a high-ranking person in the New York City Police Department. And he said, this is ridiculous. And I said, do a reasonable accommodation for your religious. And he says, I can't. I said, why not? He's like, I'm gay. I was like, what does that mean? I was like, I'm like, your belief is your belief. Your conscience, whatever you believe is the higher authority, whether it's nature, whether it's law, whether it's your truth, that is your religion. I'm like, just because I'm a Roman Catholic and I'm adhering to the Bible and I'm saying that because of all of these verses and these are the things I believe, I ultimately believe God is my conscience. God is talking to me personally. I believe that. I believe he guided my path every step of the way till sitting here right at this moment in time. I truly believe that. So, but maybe you believe it's Mother Nature is your God, or it was the wind god. What does it matter? It's your belief. That's your God. You're entitled to your opinion. And that's what this nation was founded upon, is freedom of religion, freedom to believe and say what we want to say. That was the ultimate founding of this nation, freedom of religion. That's why they left Britain to come here, right? That's why we left all of these places. So it really doesn't matter at all. And, there's plenty of things in the Roman Catholic Church that I don't agree with at all. And I have and I'll hear priests sit up there. I was in church today. I'll hear priests read passages and give their interpretation of that passage, their homily, and I don't agree with it at all. I'm like, that's not what I read. That's what you read. Who's right? Who's wrong? I don't know. It's right for me. It's right for him. I whatever.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it goes back to this law. I was kind of confused. Like, I don't know how you mix religion and state, because that could be interpreted any way you want. I mean, but now some government entity is going to say what anti-Semitism is. So what if it's something that falls outside that box? It's not anti-Semitism anymore, or it is. I mean, I don't know. I have to go with Mighty Fuzz. I think there's too much government intervention. I think he's right. Yes, we need laws. We do. It's unfortunate we're a society that needs laws. We need culture. We need community. But do we want to live? We want to live as free of government as possible. I don't think we want to live with government oversight. Well, I think you agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and the other thing about this law that boggles my mind is they didn't define anti-Semitism. It's like defining hate speech. How could you define it? People say, oh, no, you can't do hate speech. It's like, no, you can, dude. Because what is hate speech? No one can answer that. I've had that argument 1,000 times. All right, tell me what hate speech is. Let's go. Tell me what's illegal and what's illegal about it. It's hate speech is wrong. Okay, well, it's wrong, but what I define it. So what this law says is that it's according to the International Holocaust definition, but it doesn't even give the definition. So what does that mean? The International Holocaust Museum could change that definition as it feels free at any moment in time. So it could say, you know what? You don't like the color blue. That's anti-Semitism. So now, if you don't like the color blue, you're anti-Semitic. So, and this is what overreach of government. Speaking of Matty Fuzz Young, we got to get them back on here.
Yes.
Queen County de jure actually served Police Commissioner Edward Caban. They said that he's in default of his oath, and now they're going to be in the process where they're going to ask him to remedy it. I just want them to come on here and explain it to us, what that means that they served Police Commissioner Edward Caban. Why did they serve him? What's the oath he took? What is he not adhering to in his oath? I mean, a lot of it we spoke about on this podcast, but I want to hear it from their terms. And what are they asking him to remedy, and what happens if he doesn't? right? I think that would be a very interesting podcast because like he was saying on when we had him on here is like, it's not American to believe that we elect these people and they could appoint whoever they are and then they're unaccountable for 4 years or 2 years until their next election. There is a process set up by the founding fathers to remove people who aren't upholding their oath. So I think that's something that we could, I think that's a good start and basis for getting this country back on the right track, as well as I do believe we need to remove some laws like bail reform, like raise the age. We need to revise other laws to make things better, but we don't need to create any more laws. We just need to enforce the ones that are on the book. When someone's assaulted, the person who assaulted them should be held accountable for their actions. When a person sucker punching a woman in the face and breaking her jaw, they should be held seriously accountable for that. Creating another law that will also not be enforced is not going to help that. And by the way, that law that you're creating is probably going to be used for nefarious reasons against someone that doesn't deserve it. And while we're letting bad actors get out. So that's all I had to say about that.
No, hands down, I think you're 100% right. I think you just laid it out perfectly. Yeah, absolutely. It was 2 hours and 15 minutes into it. I think we covered a lot. Definitely, we covered why the NYPD is no longer apolitical. The operation they conducted at the campus. I think we've exposed the fact that it's egos of everything. The police departments had several omissions, which we believe, and we have identified, and I hope you agree with us too, that's equivalent to lying. And you have to ask yourself why. We have a deputy commissioner of intelligence who is also a faculty member of the same campus that they had this operation, the same campus that they had an accidental discharge. They failed to tell the public about this. We want a transparent police department. You should want a transparent police department too. John Sheldon, Kaz Daughtry have exacerbated and abused their authority on social media with their attacks on this entity, this podcast here, numerous media journalists, Mike Colon, who's a supporter of law enforcement, the fire department, just an all-around good kid. We need to get back to something good. We need a complete overhaul here. Everyone that watches this, I want to thank you for your support. This is New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast. And John, do you have any last words? Let's do it.
Listen, this is the original T-shirt. We're not making any more of these. They're in Maya. They're online. You can buy them online. You can go in the stores. Like I said, I would opt to go online. They're back on sale. We're not going to make any more of these. We will make other T-shirts in the future, but it's not going to be this style. So this is the original T-shirt. So if you want it, definitely go get it. The links will be in wherever you watch or listen. And that's it. 265 Police Live, brought to you by New York's Finest Retired and Unfiltered podcast. We'll be back at you.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.